So thank you everyone for joining. We're waiting for one more panelist, but as we want to stay on time and it's 8:03, we're going to get going with some introductions. My name is Naveed Alipour. I'm a co-founder, managing partner at Analytics Ventures. I'll be moderating the panel. We're San Diego-based, have our own AI lab, and we're vertical agnostic, not just healthcare focused, but essentially anywhere that AI and machine learning can be applied to clean structured data, that by making a recommendation or forecast, detecting something that doesn't belong in the images or data sets, you can increase revenues, decrease costs, and in the healthcare sense, we're proud of lots of full long life, safe life elements by doing that. Oh, sure. I usually pull them too loud, so it's a little closer. So with that, I'm going to start to my left with Armin to do introductions, and then hopefully we'll get here by the time we're Elaine, and then we'll get into some Q&A.
Good morning. My name is Susan. Good morning. My name is Armin Vidian. I'm a partner with DCVC Data Collective. DCVC is roughly a $1.1 billion seed and Series A fund. We focus on investing in companies that are at the intersection of artificial intelligence and a few key industries, of which the life sciences and healthcare have been roughly 40% of our past couple of funds. We also have a dedicated bio fund that focuses more on molecules and so on and so on.
Hi everyone, my name is Edward. I'm investment director at M Ventures. At M Ventures, we seek to back exceptional science and tech entrepreneurs to essentially drive great outcomes. We're the corporate venture capital arm of Merck. That's the German Merck, so I should be careful with how I phrase that here. EMD probably is the right way. It's about $500 million fund in total, and the part of the fund that I'm responsible for is doing investments in health tech, as well as in ag tech and food tech. We've done investments in companies like Akili, BioFink, MediSafe, and we look to basically improve patient outcomes, and ultimately anything that's going to be centered around that is in our focus.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elaine Gall, and I'm with Ascend Capital Partners. We're a Chinese investment firm that has been looking to U.S. and European companies. And our value add for these startups is to hopefully expand their markets internationally, whether it's outside of Europe to the U.S. or our special sauce is Asia. As some of you may know, the medical space in Asia is quite difficult to enter as a foreign company, especially in China, since it's so heavily regulated. So we bring kind of that expertise and connections that some foreign companies may need.
Great, thank you everyone. And I'll start with Armin. We briefly talked at the Boston World AI Conference. There's a lot of companies that say they are doing AI, but really just glorifying business intelligence. How do you, the data collective, look at it in your due diligence, finding the diamonds in the rough there, and looking at business models that are in fact applying AI applications in healthcare? So
when we take a look at AI-related companies, what we really see is how are they generating new data that is different and proprietary for them. So there may be a differentiated set of algorithms combined with hardware and so forth that make a truly unique technology that gives them access to data that no one else has, that provides unique insights, for example, say into cell morphology, in order to be able to understand how a drug is having an effect in a way that no other technology will be able to do. So indeed, that if you're talking to us about improved workflow, or that you can give better insights with the data, then we start to immediately get suspicious, as you just pointed out to me, that it's improved business intelligence. But how are you using truly differentiated technology in order to access and understand unique insights about biology that we hadn't seen before, and finding things that aren't going to be accessible through a literature search. So if you're finding things that can be then proven out in a test tube that you didn't know before, then truly it's something.
Great. Being a corporate VC, do you still functioning similar to Data Collective and Financial VC, or is it a different brand or brand on behalf of Merck as a corporate venture partner?
Yeah, it's a good question. We operate pretty much as a financial VC. So the way that we're structured is that our management company is completely separated. So I'm not a Merck employee, I'm an Ventures employee. The reason why we do that is that we make sure that we always operate in the best interest of our portfolio companies to make sure that we never ever have any information flow that's unwanted. Now that said, what we do of course provide is access to this big mothership behind us to make sure that people actually can sort of like leverage off the expertise that we have in-house. And one of the examples actually which is relevant for this panel is that Merck, as you might know, Merck KGaA Darmstadt, Germany, has a collaboration with Palantir. And so there's quite a big effort actually in-house ongoing in sort of like understanding data beyond just, let's say, that there is a correlation, but also understanding the causation of the data. And that we've seen actually those insights and those teams actually provide valuable information to some of our portfolio companies and sort of like what is an actionable outcome and what is a piece of let's say, a data insight that is something that pharma can ultimately transact on and that ultimately benefits patients. So it is part of the service we provide, but we don't try to be too close to the function.
Got it. And it's I think something relevant for the audience that they would want to know is, being based in Europe, are you global in your investments ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, it's the great pleasure, I think, of being part of a global organization with a global mandate that we can see technologies from the States, Europe, Africa, Asia. We have in our portfolio about 20% of our investments are in Asia, including Israel, 40% Europe, 40% US. I have to admit though that with the team largely based out of Europe, it does provide quite a few air miles.
Excellent. Well, Elaine, you do a lot of traveling. We were talking earlier before the panel. You have European investments as well, and you have the Asia, obviously, expertise and background. Can you talk a little bit about your fund and what you look for, and what you see different between companies in Europe, US, and Asia?
Yeah. So to be quite frank, we've been mostly focusing on European companies rather than the US, although we do see like good companies here. I think the biggest issue, I think in Silicon Valley, is that there's a bubble. And I'm very much against this bubble. I live here and I love all the brain power and research here, but I find it to be a very dangerous path that Silicon Valley is heading towards, with all these really high valuations with honestly not that much technology or even a product or revenue to back these valuations, and investors are just, I don't want to say blindly putting in money, but perhaps may not be putting in I don't think they're putting as much of a wall, they're not challenging these companies as much as they should be. So in Europe, we find it to be a little bit different in that they're kind of maybe a little more humble, in that they're more of they're trying to get up through the dust, if that makes sense. Like they're really trying to be successful by any means possible. So we look for, since we invest in more of the seed Series A round, the team, because those are the people that we'll be working with. And if you're not aligned with their vision or with what they're trying to achieve, then you're doomed from the start. And then in terms of the technology, we've looking at medical devices and diagnostic assisted software tools. We choose not to do anything that's patient facing because there's a lot of liability, and honestly, we don't know how different patients may react to certain things.
So, to go off that real quick and then have a question about the rest of the panel, what are the challenges you see with applying artificial intelligence in the healthcare space on the regulatory front? And if you could elaborate on any differences you see between companies in Europe versus US versus how it is in China, where a lot of times they don't want the data sent out.
Yeah. I think China is very interesting because all the medical information for a patient is actually not personally, privately owned. It's actually owned by the government. So that's a huge barrier that we face. And even if you're not patient-facing, anything on that a doctor sees, there is PII in that. So that's why we're helping these foreign companies to go into China, because these companies need to be almost like made in China. They have to look like a domestic company. So that's why we've set up like a platform company in which we have some sort of agreement, whether it's licensing or a consulting agreement, to bring them into China to have almost like a Chinese company in that sense. Whereas the CE and the FDA is a lot more, it's more, that path has been trodden down a lot. So there's a lot more guidance and knowledge on how to travel down to that pathway, whereas the CFDA is still a little bit unknown. I mean, even AI here in Europe is still unknown, but at least everyone is focusing in those markets that we don't need to shovel.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good point. And I know even in the U.S., the current FDA chair is putting a big push towards AI and software applications that need FDA approval because they're diagnostic versus a decision support tool. But it is uncharted territory for not just here.
Yeah, and I honestly think that like the FDA will probably have to change their thinking. It's like any government organization, no offense if anyone's in the government, is a kind of a backward, slow-moving agency. So like for AI, for example, they want to approve something that is stagnant, that is fixed. And the whole point of AI and things like deep learning is that that's the magic of it, that's the beauty of it, is that it continuously changes and improves. And like the FDA, CE have to change their policies and regulations to fit the market.
Absolutely. We welcome.
Thank you.
And while we get set up, we'll do a quick intro.
No worries, let's introduce our colleague.
Okay, wonderful. So, thanks for joining me. We did a quick intro, so maybe if you want to talk a little bit
Sure,
about
sure.
yourself and the fund.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for being late. It's so hard to find a parking slot. I drive up from Palo Alto this morning. So I'm Lu. I'm the founding and managing partner of Fusion Fund. Fusion Fund is a VC firm based in Palo Alto. We focus on early stage, deep tech, and healthcare investment. So far has 2 funds under management. Each fund size is around $100 million and invest from C to Series B. And in terms of healthcare, we mainly focus on medical devices, especially diagnostic devices, and also in healthcare, a little bit life science. My personal background, I used to do research work at Stanford University of Material Science, and later I started a medical device company focused on type 2 diabetes diagnostic. After I sold my company, somehow I ended up in the dark side and become an investor.
Thank you for that, and look forward to hearing more about what you're doing. Martin, I was wondering if you
Yeah, I had a comment. So, Elaine, so first of all, we agree at DCDC that it's a bubble and that we've got to be really careful that one screening tool that we use is we need to see that the technology is differentiated. Either it's because it's coming from top technologists who have been proven somewhere, and that it's not just a claim from somebody putting it on a slide. We have a series of screens we go through that. But yeah, it needs to have a realistic path to be able to make money. And so we're very acutely aware of that. What I would disagree with, though, is that I think the FDA, at least in the United States, has been a very effective player in showing that it can evolve. I have to say that if there's a bright spot in this administration, it might be the FDA. We've seen that a number of our companies have been able to effectively collaborate by showing that if you can show that a claim is true at a point in time, they're willing from then to grant an approval and then over time approve successive iterations of the product. But at some point, what you're saying has to be true. Remembering that the FDA approves not technologies, but your claims on those technologies. So we've seen that they understand that AI is the future, and that if you work with them collaboratively, they're absolutely willing to work with you. So we actually feel more optimistic.
What are your thoughts on regulatory challenges around companies that are software or AI applications in healthcare, working with the current system? How do they get reimbursement? How do they pay? What are some of the challenges you look to?
I mean, it's uncharted territory, right? And I would actually echo your comments. We have a very hands-on example in our portfolio company, Akili, which actually is now in fight, or they filed with the FDA for a Class 2 medical device approval, de novo, for the world's first full digital therapeutic. Now, the FDA has been nothing but supportive of this process. Of course, they're slow as usual and everything, but they've been very supportive in basically helping us get to this point of filing, setting the bars that we need to achieve, and actually giving us guidance that was very tangible from the start. Now, how that will play out on the payer side, that's another question, because this is truly something that's never been done before. So with this company, we actually have to develop the whole payment system, the whole system of, first of all, distributing the drug, so the virtual pharmacy, if you will, then ultimately getting the payment codes for that, and now hopefully proving that this is a demanded product by actually showing that there's uptake, and then finally unlocking the reimbursement for this. And this is something that we will spearhead. This effort. This is going to be the first time it's ever done in the world, and it will be heavy lifting. We might fail, we might be successful. I mean, I hope we'll be successful. But this is an example of a company actually touching on the point that you guys made as well, that has been very frugal and sort of like disciplined, both in cash consumption and evaluation. And the one thing that I would like to echo my colleagues here is, even in work we see this a lot, just sort of a word of warning, there is unfortunately at this point, let's say, money taken in by companies at too high valuations, and that unfortunately puts a lot of companies in the sad position of pricing themselves out of the market. Because what you see is that investors reason for the post-money perspective, and so if the post-money is what you're looking at, ultimately you need to get a return on that. Now, if the progress made by the company is not enough to justify any acquisition price that is desired by your investor-driven board, then you're stuck in limbo. And we see this more often than not. I've been to 3 LP events in the last couple of months, and consistently the message was to VCs, stop paying so damn much, because there's been so much residual value to pay in on investors' balance sheets, but the distributed value to pay in is at an all-time low. So, as an industry, in order to make sure that we don't sort of like fall off that cliff, I think we just all have to be very disciplined and make sure that we put a price on what has actually been achieved, instead of just what we promised.
I couldn't agree more with Edward and Elaine's earlier comment, and to what you said in Silicon Valley being a bubble. I always say that the company up here raises $10 million, I immediately put that a company in San Diego or elsewhere raising $4 million. It's half the money up here goes for commercial real estate, and God knows how much a square foot, and 5-year leases, and of course cost of living is more and everything else. And then to Edward's point is at the end of the day, you have to have a liquidity event, so it makes it difficult if you've raised too high valuations. Even if you're being frugal, right? If it's expensive. With that, since you joined, can you share with us your thoughts around investing in companies that are applying AI, call it in the medical device space, where they don't have FDA approval yet? Since you do seed investment, is that hurtful for you, or do you wait till they have medical device, that they have that approval?
Yeah, so for us, we invest from C to Series B. So for lots of companies, we invest in the C stage. They don't have a FDA approval yet. They're preparing the filing for 510K. But I agree with other panelists just mentioned. What we saw in the past 1 year, FDA being very supportive. And also they start to stop asking stupid questions, I'll put it that way, especially for AI in healthcare application. They try to be more understandable and also try to accelerate the whole process. Actually, for the past 1 year, I invested 5 companies are doing AI in healthcare, and 3 of them was able to, after I put the investments within actually 8 months, they were able to get a 510K approval. So it's pretty fast. But on the other side, it's also required the founder to have a good understanding of what FDA really want. Treat them as your friend instead of your enemy. And if you want your friend to really help you, they have to understand you first. Provide a diverse data set, provide a more comprehensive report, and also, as you mentioned, try to give not only just put the technology up, but also put the procedure to make sure that what you claim could actually be realized in the near future. So by doing so, from my example, I saw the founder was able to get FDA as fast as 5 months, start filing to when they get it. And for AI in healthcare, I feel now another problem, as other panelists mentioned, is evaluation. And on one side, yes, as a VC, we try to be more disciplined on the evaluation. But on the other side, Like we're the traditional conventional healthcare investor, but there are also lots of other investors that used to invest in AI, but found it so hard to find a killer app for AI in other industry. And turns out to be healthcare is a good industry. So all these AI investors start to invest in healthcare, and they use the same criteria to evaluate a healthcare company, same as AI. So that's why we saw lots of high valuation company. And for AI in healthcare, although the good thing is the FDA approval could go faster, but the market, the vertical market become fragmented. So it's really hard for us to distinguish which one is gonna be big. Maybe another one could only sell for $100 million in 5 years.
Great, thank you for that. Question for the entire panel, I'll start from Armin on down. AI and ethics has become increasingly more and more of an issue. What are your thoughts on that and population health and the fact that we all have personal data, but if, to Elaine's point in China, that it's not owned by the individuals making sure of that, what are some challenges you're seeing there around applying AI to population health and the ethical aspects of that privacy?
So we're noticing here a heightened sensitivity around ethics and who owns your data and just exactly what is getting where. A number of hospitals in the United States, if they are going to share, say, image data with you or any other sort of personal data, it often has to go through scrubbing on their end and not on the portfolio company's end. That means that it may take a little bit longer for you to get the data that you need if you're relying on it. However, we're also very careful to make sure that we're separating wheat from chaff in where there is an actual ethical issue and where that is really a result of misunderstanding about the AI. So the fact that there is individual patient data being used, but in fact that is actually being integrated into an understanding for the algorithms in order to be able to predict more effectively about a certain output or value doesn't present an ethical issue. And I think that we have to do a little bit better education on what exactly the issues are in ethics and where they do not lie. And having said that, we're really careful that we're identifying investments where it can't be misconstrued too easily. And that if you're using personal data, it's data that can't be misused in the wrong hands because somebody can't misuse somebody's genetic data in the same way that they would misuse your credit card data. So that has to be fairly secure. It also has to be fairly evident that there's a net positive good that's going to come from it. This is a little bit trickier for some of our national security investments. Okay? But in the field of the life sciences, it has often been a little bit easier to differentiate unless you're talking about individual patients.
I think, well, you said most of the points, but I would certainly like to highlight one point that you made, which is let's say, there's sort of a tendency to overcorrect at the moment, and it is not always necessary to basically use the same approach of let's say, blinding data for everything. Now, of course, coming from somebody affiliated with a pharma, that's a dangerous statement to make. So there is definitely a need for a lot of these type of let's say, technologies to actually be at arm's length, to have, for example, a separation there and only provide metadata or meta insights actually to the ultimate vendor. That's something that we are very cautious with because of also the industry of where our money comes from. But there is also a trend, of course, where everybody here in the room sells the majority of its data, or not even sells, provides it just for ease of use and convenience, Uber, Deliveroo, what have you. And so finding the balance in that and then ultimately driving the added value to the patient from that is where we really seek to sort of like make investments and to ultimately place our bets. And as a final thing, I think it is very good that this discussion is starting. I think in Europe we're a little bit further ahead with GDPR regulation and such than here in the US. I think it's very necessary for the regulatory bodies to actually make statements and to make sure that reverse incentives are going to be barred as much as possible. But I think a healthy debate with people on the front line is definitely necessary.
I would say this is the reason why we focus on diagnostic assistance tools. The keyword is assistance. So The PII, PHI information, yes, will be spread by the time our portfolio companies get it, but it's the doctor that integrates all the information from things that may be in their other health records or even things that aren't in the records, like family history or what they ate that day, or are they stressed or something like that, that we don't necessarily deal with that. And that's why we focus on diagnostic assistance tools. But one thing, and I think Armin and Edwin covered like everything that I would have said as well, but I want to take also a little bit of a pivot on the ethics point. So I recently just finished Bad Blood, which is that book about Theranos, and that has been in my mind for so long. And the ethics, like red flags that have been pointing at that, like throughout that book, just boggles my mind. That it went so far, and yet it fooled so many smart, intelligent people. And the reason why we're in healthcare is that you help the patients, you help people like us, our loved ones, family, friends, stuff like that, so that they can, live healthier, better lives. And that there was just perhaps a blind eye to the ethics behind it. And this also goes into people, the management team. Where were their ethics when they were, going to direct patient testing when the technology wasn't there? How many lives could they have, could that have been a fatal consequence for? And I think that's the ethics that, we as Ascend, we want to focus on is, okay, are these people, are they trying to cheat just so that they can make $1, or maybe billions of dollars in this case? But that's where it's like that gut check feeling is of the management team that, is there some other hidden agenda? That's kind of the ethics that we really focus on.
Got it. Well, now I have a book on my list.
Oh my God. Anybody who hasn't read it needs to read it.
Yeah.
It's so good. And you start Googling her and you're like, oh my God, she's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, a slight tangent, but the last JP Morgan conference, we were having a meeting. I think we might have just met, and then I saw her sitting like 2 seats down.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Can I just quickly comment? Actually, what I like about this industry, and what I think you touch on sort of peripherally, there's a very clear North Star. And the North Star is that ultimately all of us here in the room are trying to further and positively implement people's lives. And I think if we remain true to that, then that is, of course, a very clear thing to sort of mitigate the risk that you outline.
And to add to Edward's comments, we are seeing a lot more social impact investing, whether it's more from the family offices than the traditional VCs, corporate VCs, but you have family offices now that, and I think this will resonate with the entrepreneurs in the crowd, where they don't want to just invest passively. They want to look to invest somewhere that they're doing good. They're being guided by that North Star, whether it's to find cancer earlier, the best combination of drugs, or whatever it may be. So I think it is an exciting time for the entrepreneurs in the crowd in that regard. And it's not just your traditional VCs, but increasingly these family offices that are looking to make a difference. With that, let me just to finish the panel on the AI.
Sure. So basically to add on that, because Theranos is famous as a Stanford-backed startup, Stanford alumni. So lots of people keep asking me, oh, how come Elizabeth becomes so successful with so much money? And also interesting, I know lots of the big families sponsor them because many of them are the board members of Hoover Institute based at Stanford. So the problem for this company, not only the ethics problem, it's also how founders choose investor, how investors choose founder. We can tell from the investor profile of Theranos, we have zero investor have a professional healthcare background. So on one side, maybe the founder preferred to fund an investor without healthcare background, but also on the other side, she was a super young founder. She don't have experience in the industry at all. And with now we have all this life science technology being evolving and developed for the past few years. Actually, we really need founder to have a deep understanding of the industry. And we know there are so many black boxes, but at least you have to know whether it's gonna work or you're not sure. And she does not know. She does not have a board know how to do it. She does not have an investor, group of investors tell her what to do, what not to do. And then the end result is a bad blood. So So I think one side aspect is important for founder side, but on the other side, from the investor perspective, we also need to be cautious. One thing is to remind our peers, like if there's some company came out to be another Theranos, we need to make sure we did not, as a capital side, did not send out the wrong signal. Another thing is now no matter what sequencing, editing, all this new technology involving new therapy, all this new thing came out, whether no matter as an investor or founder, we have enough knowledge to have a better control of the technology. If the consequences is out of control, maybe now it's not the best timing for us to put capital in. Founder, even researcher scientists always want to try to pursue something brand new or the best technology in the world. But as us, we're trying to help them choose the right technology to do the commercialization. So we have the responsibility too. I think not only founder need to take education on that, the investor has to take education on that as well. Then we could choose the right founder, right technology to be founded and send out the right signal. Your technology is great, but we don't know too little about it. The industry is not ready, so let's wait.
So I'm really glad you mentioned that expertise
Yeah.
part. So a question to start with you, we'll go back this way. In the healthcare space, specifically in the applying artificial intelligence in the healthcare space, are you finding the companies you're investing in, are they domain experts in the sense that they are from the healthcare space, they are doctors, they work at a hospital, they have that domain expertise, or are they more from a computer science, data science background, and they need to bring on, call it an advisory board, employees that are the doctors that know the pain point they're addressing?
At least from most of the company I invest and talk to, the foundation is still the healthcare background, the dependence end of the industry. Because to be honest, compared with AI technology, healthcare industry is so complicated. Not only technology industry, but also so many different players. Technology is one side. When the product is ready, how to push it to penetrate the market, how to work with the insurance company, payer, buyer, get through the FDA. So the deep understanding of the industry, the healthcare domain knowledge is still the foundation. And meanwhile, we want to add on layer of AI to make it smart. Like we still need this big chunk of the hardware, medical devices to collect the biosample to give an accurate result. But meanwhile, we could use deep learning, machine learning, computer vision to have personalized diagnostic result and treatment plan. And also on the other side, I know lots of AI experts, Stanford, Fei Fei, and Jia, they're all from Google AI. They are working on AI in healthcare when they're at Google. And now they left Google. Like Jia went to Stanford, she's working on a smart hospital funded by Stanford. But when I talk to them, they're saying that, okay, we really want to learn about healthcare. We don't know enough about healthcare. We need to work with the expert to let them tell us what we could help. Like I could deliver what they ask us to do, but I don't know the end result, what is the indication of it. Like I give you tons of data result, and the expert has to tell me this data indicate the disease is our personalized result. So I feel even, and also on the other side, unfortunately till now, even AI has like much better application in healthcare industry to show the full capability. We still see that the level we use AI in healthcare is still like elementary level. So lots of just very simple data analytical, very simple deep learning application. So we have to, based on that, to move forward. Maybe in the future we'll have more opportunity for AI expert to initiate healthcare application, but now has to start from healthcare. And also the good thing is now this two group of people, they start to talk to each other, they appreciate each other's expertise. That's the reason we saw so many new companies came out from San Francisco, from San Diego, from Pittsburgh. That's where actually these different group of experts emerging together.
That's a great point. The convergence of life science and software and that expertise.
Yeah.
So, Elaine, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would completely echo what Luke said. I think what we really like to see in startups is two co-founders, one from the healthcare space and then one from a computer science background. Having said that, that's very difficult to find. And it also depends on the type of company that we're looking at. So for example, since we also focus on like medical devices, that can be more of a hardware thing. So for example, we've invested in a digital microscope scanner, like a microscope. You don't necessarily need the healthcare background on that, but you need to understand what the need is. Because essentially, if your company isn't solving a problem that's out there, then the problem should exist. So in this case, this company has like a very deep relationship with like a pathologist. And the pathologist is actually the person that gave him the idea to create this device. But for more like AI, like software type companies, we definitely look for both like a healthcare background co-founder as well as a software engineer.
Great, thank you. What do you see out there, whether in Europe or the US or elsewhere, in regards to companies that you find getting traction, do they have that founder that's a doctor, a healthcare expert, or are they computer science? They're bringing in those advisors from the medical front.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably a bit of a different animal in that we actually pick a number of topics per year that we like to sort of explore. A lot of our investments are driven by a bottom-up analysis of the space. So in that, we basically, as an example, we also actually look at, for example, outside technologies, and then, for example, we would invest in only help develop, let's say, a healthcare vertical. What that means is the following. We invested in a company called Wiliot in Israel that develops battery-free Bluetooth chips. Everybody's like, what the hell is that going to do with healthcare? We believe that actually having these beacons, you can, for example, very accurately monitor how people are moving in an inpatient setting through a hospital, and whether, for example, all of a sudden they fall down, and whether, for example, intervention is needed, whether, for example, adherence by applying these things on a medical packet is obtained, whether, for example, drugs are being held in a certain temperature range. So these type of things are complete outside technologies, but we believe that we can bring sort of a healthcare view to. So coming back to your original question, it is very difficult for us to answer because with this bottom-up approach, we end up sometimes investing in, let's say, companies that are completely left field, but we are the guys bringing the healthcare expertise. Whereas sometimes we invest in companies that are more healthcare driven, but we try and partner them with, let's say, a more tech-enabled entrepreneur. And we actually end up creating companies. 1/3 of our portfolio is homegrown. We created these companies from scratch. So just as a conclusion, I think one thing that we have identified, which we find very important, is that actually healthcare as an industry is completely different than any other industry, and that it's very regulated. So the let's say the tech strategies of developing an MVP and just pushing it out and iterating on the fly, that does not work because unfortunately you've got to get the need right and you've got to get the gatekeepers on your side. The gatekeepers being, for example, payers and physicians. And so with that, I think we have, as a team, quite a bit of expertise in that side of the spectrum. And thereby we, as a team, believe we can actually enable some of the more technologically heavy teams to sort of like also enter the healthcare space.
That's great, thank you. I want to open it up to Q&A, but I want Armin to...
Sure. I wanted to build on Elaine and Lou's points on we're in a fortunate position in a way that we see a lot of very technically differentiated entrepreneurs who clearly know their stuff when it comes to AI. But then when it comes to product, we see a lot of pitches that are lacking. And it is critical to have spent that much time with physicians and vets who's using the product to make sure that every step of the way it fits within their workflow, that it's solving a true need that they have, and it's not your presupposition about healthcare and the need that AI is going to solve for them. That means that it's often important early to have somebody who's focused as the chief product officer, often within one of your first few hires in the company, who's just dedicated to figuring that out. Because it doesn't matter if you have the best AI in the world, if you're not having that real tight fit with the customer, it's going to be very hard for you to really see market success.
I love that comment you made at the end there. You know, we always say that, unlike Elon Musk always talking about AI and the robots taking over the world because it's being used every day, we're nowhere near that. This is still in the first or second inning. And AI is a tool that can be used. It will be used for good and for bad in any industry. Just like a car is a tool, it kills hundreds of thousands of people, but it also has obviously massive potential or positive effects on our lives. But you still need the domain expert. You need the pharmacologist, the oncologist, the radiologist, and just like Excel or TurboTax didn't replace our CPAs, AI is not going to replace the doctors. It's going to empower them to do the job that is our premise. And yes, there's that fear of ultimately jobs being replaced, but there's going to be jobs created that we can't even fathom right now.
And when we talk about replacing a job, we have to know what that means and what that person does, right? So you had just better know that that person should be replaced and that your technology can do it, because it's a big deal to replace somebody who, reads and echoes and so on, because they serve an important role in patient care. Jeff Bezos had this down when they came up with the Kindle. He said the book is an amazing invention, and we have a big hurdle to climb. Not the book is going away. You'll notice his language. The same applies here.
That's a great point. So I know we're coming up on 8:50 here, so I'd like to open up for Q&A if anyone has questions for the panel or anyone specifically. No questions, don't be shy.
It's early in the morning.
Impossible to offend venture capitalists.
So quick show of hands. How many of you are founding entrepreneurs here? Okay, sounds good.
Maybe to work backwards, us asking you guys questions, your founders, like what are you looking for from like this type of panel? Like, what brought you here? Maybe we can help you. All right, you guys got everything.
So with that, something that we found interesting in some of our companies, and to Armin's point, with Curemetrics, our company that uses AI to detect breast cancer, and all my family, by the way, doctors. I'm the black sheep of my wife's family, were my parents, brothers, everyone. And so my youngest brother is in medical school. I said, maybe don't go to radiology. But that being said, as an aside, we have a shortage of doctors in the U.S. And if they use a tool to find cancer in mammograms faster, that's just going to make them more efficient. And if you look in Mexico, in the entire country of Mexico, they have under 200 radiologists with mammography expertise. So breast cancer is a huge problem. And so if you can find a tool that's going to empower the doctor, the few radiologists they have to spot that cancer earlier, it's going to, of course, save lives, save money, and it's going to be a huge impact. And so that resonated with what you said in regards to having to work into the workflow of the doctor and the hospital and the reimbursement. Would you like to give any examples of some of one of your portfolio companies and how they do that?
Sure, I'll use the example of Bay Labs. Bay Labs uses artificial intelligence and deep learning to drive cardiac echoes. So the idea is that this is an area that is ripe for disruption by AI. Echocardiography is the standard for diagnosis of heart disease. There are 30 million cardiac echoes done in the US alone every year. There is a trained sonographer who goes through extra education just to read an echo. And yet 50% of the time or more, and that's an actual statistic, but those echoes are redone because the physician doesn't like them, can't read it properly, or wants to see another view. So Bay Labs is reinventing cardiac ultrasound into a simple procedure that lower skilled professionals in the hospital, medical assistants, PAs, nurse practitioners, and so on can do. We like this type of investment because it upskills lower skilled people in the hospital to take on procedures that traditionally higher trained people can do. So we can move this upstream. For the future of treatment, it means that potentially one day, when you turn 60, you can go in and proactively have a heart screen to see what all the minute measures such as ejection fraction, aortic valve area, peak flow gradient, all these sorts of things are, so that we can form a proactive plan for your heart care rather than dropping dead one fine day for causes unknown. To your question about how it's being guided on a product, we have some of the world's leading cardiovascular physicians, surgeons, interventional cardiologists, and so on, who are deeply involved with the company in their clinical trials, making sure it meets clinical endpoints, but also becoming a product that people want to use. And it's those heavy use clinicians that you need to get engaged with sooner rather than later so they can tell you how it's sizing up versus options currently available to you.
I wanted to just touch on one point that you had said especially is I think disruptive AI, to describe that, is a really good word. However, what we have to consider for this product to market journey is how is this disruptive technology going to get into this workflow that has been happening for maybe hundreds of years. So it's really important that, yes, you may have this groundbreaking, like innovative product, but if a doctor is not willing to take it onto their day-to-day operations, whereas these doctors are already overburdened by paperwork or just trying to survive, just trying to get their patients the basic level of care, how are you going to ask them to change the way that they operate on a day-to-day basis to try this technology that might or might not work, that might make their life easier, it might not. So the way that we see is that we have to take gradual little steps. Yes, the end point is perhaps this completely automated AI platform technology, something like that, but we have to scale it back a little. And I think Lou, you mentioned this, is just scaling back, thinking about it from the end user standpoint of, okay, if they have to do, if this is the end goal, what are the little step-by-step things that we can help this clinician, practitioner, researcher to use this product?
Yeah, to add on that, I think totally agree with Elaine, especially when we talk to founder. Like disruptive is such a good word, but what we're looking for is a disruptive technology could upgrade the industry to enable the existing player. As you mentioned, it's more about how to lower the integration cost of the new technology, not just the cost of technology itself. The integration cost could be as low as possible to make the existing player willing to take it, to make like hospital, they don't need to upgrade their infrastructure to take your 4.0 like solution. And also like add on to Armin's mentioned earlier, remind me of another company actually we co-invest together with Data Collective doing the same thing, because now we see the trend is patients are taking more and more proactive approach to take all these diagnostics. So how we enable them to be able to take more screens and without taking too much time, too much cost. There's a company we co-invest together called Septo Medical. They're focusing on the, for example, CT scan. CT scan, not only the cost is high, time cost is high. Another thing is you accumulate this radiation, it's lifelong accumulation. But for them, use computer vision to reconstruct medical imaging. Patient could take just low resolution image with very short period of time, with low cost, and be able to provide the same accuracy of the result. So this type of company is evolving fast and also integrate with the hospital very quickly and enable even for the doctor, they don't need have to be so professional trained to be able to operate the devices. So that's definitely the future and that's really coming up.
Great, thank you, Lou. Edward, would you like to get the final comment? I know we're at 8:50 and I want to be mindful of everyone's time.
Final comment, very difficult. As I said before, I mean, for us it's very simple. We operate from one mission and one mission only, and there is indeed a North Star in our vision. And ultimately, if we have technologies that serve that ultimate goal of improving patient outcomes, then we believe the path is basically the one that we can design, as long as the goal is clear.
Great. Well, thank you to my esteemed colleagues here for being on this panel, and thank you for joining us.